Greeting, ladies and gentlemen, your friendly neighborhood faggot here. Today I'm going to be doing my first official game review. Now, I had really never any intention in buying Anthem. I didn't expect it to come out great. I was always hopeful. I was going to pray that with the coming of Apex Legends that maybe EA was back on the right path. Maybe these developers had decided, and EA decided as a publisher, to start giving out better content for the individual players. But as it turns out, Anthem is, to best describe it, underwhelming and disappointing. Like I said, I did not have any intention of buying Anthem, and I did not buy Anthem. But, fag boy, how could you possibly review the game if you didn't buy it? Well, I did get the EA Access Pass so I could play the game, and I did play it. I played it so much yesterday, and I played it some today, and I played, 10 plus hours over the game. Went through the story and whatnot, did some side missions, did some Strongholds, and I pretty much got to as much as I could of the game so that I could give have a proper understanding of it and not have some horrible biased review with a lack of knowledge. I'm telling myself that if I can just prevent one person from buying the game fully and giving EA that $60 juicy price for Anthem, then the small amount of money that I spent on the Premier Access will be worth that price. So I'm going to break this review up doing a couple different things. I will be doing a discussion on the story, like the core campaign and how those specific characters have progressed, the world as a whole, including the open world outside and Fort Tarsus, and then the gameplay, which will be focused around the javelins, the enemies, and the weapons and abilities. Before I get into some of the main topics, I kind of want to go over some overarching pros and cons that I thought about the game. The first off is the visuals, and I'm talking the graphics. Just everything from the textures, to the shadows, to the particle effects, and everything in between, all the lighting effects, and everything you see is absolutely just eye-popping. It's beautiful. There are some times when you get into fights where there's so many explosions, and so many particles, and so much gunfire, that you're almost blinded, which can be an issue sometimes, but some other times it helps with the immersion. And I think just overall, when you look at the world and texture-wise and lighting-wise, everything is mwah, it is good, and is probably one of the best looking AAA games that I have seen to date. The next is the soundtrack and the sounds in general. I think that there could be room for improvement, not in the soundtrack. I'm talking about sounds just overall, because some of the guns sound like I'm using an oversized stapler. They're like, do, 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 do. And then others sound like they're just these huge mauling machines, which are amazing, but they just feel weak. But again, they are kind of weak compared to your abilities and whatnot. But then a lot of the other sounds, like ambience and the noises that the creatures make and whatnot, are good. They're pristine. I couldn't complain about them. The abilities have power to them, and they sound like you would expect they would. The soundtrack is amazing when it plays properly, of course, because sometimes you get combat music when there is none. But the overarching soundtrack, especially the main menu theme, which is this one right here, just is it's that opening theme is orgasmic, and I really like it. The flight in this game, which is this huge mechanic in the game that is supposed to be the central movement point, kind of feels unexplored in some ways. There is really no aerial combat, which I don't really have too big of an issue with. There are some enemies that do hover and fly in the sky, but for the most part, you don't have to engage them while flying. There's no real aerial combat in there and anything to go along with it. The flight itself feels fine. There are times when you're hovering and when you're going over the battlefield and stuff that it works fluidly and it feels good. But then there's other times when you're just going straight and flying that it can feel a little bit slippery. I personally think that it's slippery when you're just going in, your regular flying mode to get somewhere. And the overheating is one of the most disjointing and irritating things that I've come across in a long time. And I'm not talking about in combat, because there are certain enemies that can overheat you faster and can cause your engines to, overheat, obviously, and you will fall to the ground and you won't be able to hover. You'll be vulnerable compared to when you're in the air and whatnot. When I'm flying around the open world and I have to constantly land or fly straight down or go through water or something just to cool down my mech suit that has been years in the making and is some advanced piece of technology, yet it overheats in 30 seconds. It just is, it's irritating. it just pulls me out of the immersion, and I wish that they would have explored that more in the combat and not so much to irritate me when I'm trying to explore the world or to get somewhere. So something I hear constantly repeated over and over again about stories and looter shooters is, well, it's a looter shooter. You shouldn't be surprised by an average or lackluster campaign, because that's not the main point of the game. But to me, those words do not matter in any way, shape, or form. When I see a game that is expressing a story that is coming out, and especially in a new unexplored world, I expect to have at least above average and entertaining campaign, given heart and effort. And I don't care what kind of game it is, a puzzle game, a game like Subnautica, which is a survival game, looter shooters, whatever, side scrollers, everything. Try to give the most effort into it as possible. And this game doesn't have that. It feels like an empty shell of a heart decided to try to create whatever this was, piece together, random junk and fragment it throughout time. And it just doesn't, it has moments. Yes, it has its moments, but that is just crushed and overshadowed by the rest of the looming issues and horrible decisions that were put into this campaign. Now what I discuss here is my thoughts on the main storyline, not the side quests and none of the events in the world or the strongholds or anything like that. The main quest with the main NPCs, the main characters, all that good stuff that is supposed to be good, but it's just, again, half-assed and lackluster. The campaign itself is fragmented due to these horrible mission structures and the tomb quest, which forces you to do tedious busy work for a long period of time, which then spreads out your campaign. Someone I read was, oh, it's great because it forces you to go explore this beautiful world and you won't regret it. But I don't want to be forced to go do something. I don't want to be forced into exploring the world. I want to explore it on my own. I want to be entertained. But what this mission does is it requires you to do, like I said, horrible busy work to complete a bunch of challenges in order to progress in the campaign, which spreads it out and creates just this feeling within you that's just like, why do I have to do this? And I just want to get onto the campaign. I just want to continue on. And when it comes to most of the characters, I like some of the characters. I liked Halleck and I liked Owen. I think they had good character structures. I thought Owen was energetic and entertaining, although and then Halleck is stern, yet he has a soft side to him, and it's just, those two characters are great. All the facial animations between all the main characters are great. They're able to show a wide range of emotions throughout their entire face, not just their mouth moving or their eyes or just their body, but they have everything together, just makes them feel alive, and that is good to see in the campaign story. And while there are some weaker main characters that I personally didn't like, you might like them, I just think that overall their character traits and their emotions and how they display themselves is well done. Now, when we get into the actual campaign, it is poorly created. It is, again, fragmented due to these horrible missions that force you to do the same thing over and over in every campaign mission. It feels like the Titanfall 1 campaign where you're just going in, oh yeah, team deathmatch. Oh yeah, free for all. Oh yeah, team deathmatch, with a little bit of dialogue over on it. The bad guy, whose name is the Monitor, is basically out to just start a new world order. He's just there. He's a bad guy because he wants power and he wants to create his own empire. That's it. There's really nothing more. He wants to take this precious relic, this, powerful item, and he just wants to be powerful. That's it. There's really nothing more to him. I think if his motives and everything were changed, he could be a more interesting character. I don't personally hate how he talks and how he interacts with you, but just his motivation and how they built his arc, how he's implemented in the story is terrible. And the Dominion, same thing. It's just an evil empire. He's part of the Dominion, by the way. It's just an evil empire that just wants power to harness, the artifacts and the Anthem and everything. And there's this, like I said, it has its moments. Like there's one little part in there where you get to see the fall of Freemark, and it's just that cinematic, like cutscene area. I was hoping I could get in there like a flashback, that I could get into the action or something. That right there could have been an awesome story mission, and if it progressed off of that, it could have just been a whole lot better, but it wasn't. It was poorly constructed. The end fight wasn't too amazing, and all the structures to all the missions in the campaign just made the game feel tedious and detracted from that main story, which wasn't that great overall. When it comes to you know, the interaction with the other characters, you know, with this deep dialogue that they were talking about, how, oh, you could build relationships and you can, you know, make decisions that change the outcomes and all the special stuff that you'd expect from, you know, other, you know, deep RPG games and Bioware games is just non-existent. You have two choices in dialogue when you're talking to any of the given characters, whether it's mainline or, you know, little side grunt characters that no one cares about. And they don't really make a difference other than changing a couple of dialogue lines that are said. There's no real impact that you make on the game. You can't form relationships with anyone. You're forced into these relationships, and there's nothing more than predisposed relationships that you might not like. Maybe you don't like a specific character, can't do anything about it. You can say like maybe one or two mean things that doesn't change their attitude towards you at all, that won't change the storyline in any way, shape, or form, that won't change outcomes. So it's all worthless. It was all lie. We get none of that, and it's very basic for something that's supposed to be from Bioware, of all companies that made Mass Effect and these other RPG games that were awesome. But this is just not. It felt like the developers just gave up. They just stopped. They just half-assed it again. They just don't care. And this, I would have forgiven some of the other things if this was great, and I would have forgiven this being horrible if other things were great, but it's all across the board just half-assed and mediocre. And then at other points, it's just horrendous and tedious. We all know that they had 6 years to work on this. That's what they stated. And people keep using the excuse, well, this is a game as a service. They'll keep coming out with content and they'll keep, you know, it's not going to make money and they're going to make it better. But I don't care about that practice. I don't want a game that is going to be finished in a year or two and get released today and make me pay the full price. I don't want that. That's the industry. That seems to be the industry standards that is building up, is releasing a half-finished game now, defending it, saying it'll get better later, and then it might get better down the line, it might not, and people being, well, look, I told you so. But I want to play the game now. I want to enjoy it now. And even if it were like that and I did enjoy it right now, I don't care. I want I want everything. I want all of it. I want, of course, content update in the future, but as it seems, even if they do update content in the future and they expand on things, there's so many core issues with the AI being stupid, with things just feeling dead, and the tedious missions. I don't think there's really much of a future for this game, however much I wish to explore the world and the rich lore behind this, as it was interesting to me, and some of the little bits that you can pick up were, you know, they were exciting to read, they were fun, but it's just not a game that I could ever recommend to anyone. If you ask me if you should buy it, please don't. Someone please in the comments tell me that I stop you from buying the game so I feel better about myself for actually playing it for so many hours and spending money on EA's access. Please save me, please. Now in a game like this, which is completely focused around loot, getting better weapons to fight better, bigger enemies, and, you know, building up your character and your arsenal to go fight, you kind of want a nice open world that is lush, exciting, and just a beautiful eye candy piece. And unfortunately, they did miss the mark here in a sense. It's not horrible to a point where I'd say that it's just unpleasing to look at and you never want to waste time exploring around. The Outer Worlds is nice. It does have a similar look to it in many of the areas, but there are just locations like the Fortress of Dawn and, you know, a couple of these scrapper bases and pits and some of the caves and underwater with all these particle effects and the glow and these structures that just look unearthly, and the huge castles, you know, the Fortress of Dawn is just, there's just these great places within this environment, but then there are just so many disappointments. Like I see little areas that I'm like, oh, this is a cave and it's just a hole in the wall and I want to go explore deeper, and then you get hit with loading screens, which is one of the worst things that you can do in something that you claim is a seamless open world, is to have to put a loading screen between you and another area that you thought you could just walk into. And then you get into that area, you turn around, and there's just this glowing or this, you know, glass wall behind you, or wall that you're like, how the hell am I in here? And why couldn't I just walk down into this area and enjoy the entrance and, you know, the pathway into this new area? But you just don't get that. Now, of course, the E3 presentation showed this huge living, breathing world with fauna fighting and it was beautiful, and Monster Hunter World is one of the games that I think does it near perfectly with the interaction between, you know, different creatures, you know, large creatures having small fauna and flora being interacting and traveling different places. And this game just really has almost nothing. There is some ambient noise, and you see some animals scuttling around here and there. You have these little rabbit things and wolves and, you know, these interesting things. I think call them like Teslars or something, and those are really cool and they're awesome. But you don't see them that often, and the underwater areas are just bland fish, some glow, and it's just not interesting. It doesn't feel filled with life and exciting. It's just dead in ways, and I just can't picture myself spending hours and hours and just looking around. Like in Subnautica is a perfect example of this. Every biome was lush and beautiful. Well, they had some that were beautifully horrific and just feel dead, but it was supposed to be that way in those areas because it was surrounded by so many different things that felt alive and in the daytime and even more alive at night, with all these creatures floating around and all the interaction that was there. But this game just lacks that, and you just have something that feels lackluster. It doesn't feel completely empty and dead, but many of the areas, it's just some ruins. It just looks like someone dropped a nuclear bomb, and it's, you know, 10,000 years later, and things are finally starting to pour in, other than the flora. And that's what you get when you go into the open world. A lot of the events that are out there, which I won't get too deep into them because I'm going to go into that in gameplay, but a lot of the events just pop up only when you're really close to them. You don't get to see these markers around the map, so it's not like you know that there's this world that's just constantly changing and moving. You just kind of feel like it's always just in the moment things that it just drops on you, like, okay, you're here, do this. Okay, you're here, do this. I just wish there was more to this outside world, because that would give me more reason to go do free play and to explore more and visit these amazing areas that are there. And it has its moments, but it's just overall lackluster and dull and gray. Fort Tarsis is another huge thing that is important to you as a character and you as a player, because this is your home base, your stead. This is your mojo area. This is the fort. It's Fort Tarsis. It's supposed to be where your character lives, where this is the hub of your operations. You have your javelins here. You have all the characters here. You have most of the interaction going on here. And in the E3 demo, they showed this amazing marketplace area with moving machines and NPCs constantly interacting and talking to each other, and so much motion. It just felt so fluid and alive. Then when you get into the game, again, it looks like someone released some fart gas, and there's only a small handful of people who could survive. And you get this marketplace that is only filled with these somewhat lifeless dummy NPCs that move around, and their lips will move, and some of them will talk, and it feels static, and there's no real moving machinery. It's just a old castle with a couple hermits living in it. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel alive. It doesn't feel energetic. They have the background ambience, which sounds like bustling and noise and stuff, and you get into the marketplace, you can hear it far off, but then you're in the place that's supposed to be the most populated, and all you see is NPCs flailing their arms around and walking in circles, and, you know, some will actually have interactions with each other and talk, and then the other ones just move their mouths, and they just look like some animatronic like some horrible sex doll that someone tried to put together and make it lifelike, and it just came out to be this horrendous creation and abomination that they thought would be a beautiful, like, cozy environment, and it's just not that. It's just disappointing in every way, shape, or form. There's obviously clear deception here in the open world and in Fort Tarsis from what they showed in the demo, saying that it's real gameplay. None of that was real gameplay in any way, shape, or form. So many things are missing. So many things have been changed, dulled down, and you've just created this huge open seamless world, as you call it, and taken that and just uninspired garbage has just been spewed all over it. And it could have been so great. And there are some great open worlds. I love The Witcher 3's world. And, you know, even Destiny 2 has better environments and less loading screens than these environments do. While they weren't the best, Destiny 2 wasn't the best, it feels better than this one. I don't know why. It just has more change in environment and less loading screens. So now let's get into the gameplay, which is something that everyone was so excited about because they saw these javelins. They're like, oh my god, it's Iron Man Simulator. You get to fly around, you have a combat with these complex enemies, and you have so much entertainment. I got guns and I got abilities, and there's so much variety. And with the javelins, they did a great job. They all look unique, and they all feel unique. The Storm is this mage that can fly above the battlefield and just hail down different elements, ice balls, fire, electricity, and just so much more. And it's so much fun to play that character because I had originally the Colossus, which is your giant Titan tank, and it's fun because you can just run through, just smash people with a shield while launching barrages of like artillery shells and railgun fire when you have like this minigun on you. And the ult for them feels satisfying. You get the giant cannon on the Colossus, and then on the Storm, you have this ultimate mage, elemental ability where you just get to smother a bunch of enemies in each. You get believe it's an ice attack, a lightning attack, and then a fire attack, and it's just this huge nuke of power, and it just feels good. The Interceptor I didn't really get to play with. I just watched some people play with it, and it's an extremely melee focused, quick mech suit, more like exosuit more like, and you just slash the shit out of everything and anything you can see and find. You're so quick and agile, you're just darting around, beating the hell out of everything you find, cutting into little pieces. And then you have the Ranger, which is just this overall, average, jack of all trades, master of none. And that's still entertaining because you still have movement speed, you still have unique abilities, you throw grenades. And if you want that, traditional tactical, soldier feel, I'd say that's the best bet for you. You throw grenades, fire missiles, you just have your guns and everything. But then you get to what you use these on, which are the enemies, and the AI is just brain dead in 90% of the situations. I can't believe how stupid some of these creatures act. Some of them will, when you're hovering in the sky and flying, they'll act as if they've never seen a flying entity ever in their life. They just don't know what to do. They just walk in circles, look around, they don't shoot you. Some of them are strictly melee based, so I was able to easily exploit some of the enemies with the Storm because it has the highest hover time. You can hover in the air way longer than any other javelins. And they're just so stupid. You could walk up to some, shoot them, and they'll just stand, walk around, or they'll just T-pose and they'll do nothing. They'll stand there. They're just absolute idiots. Now, I'd expect some lower train of thought from some of the grunt enemies, but even some of the, larger, more beastly creatures and, commanders of some of these things are just the same thing. It's like, oh, this one's an elite. Oh, this one's a legendary. Guess what it is? It's just the same exact creature or unit, just made with more health and do more damage. Everything is so stupid. There's no way else to put it. It's just stupid. They act stupid. They do stupid things. There's no real, they don't have much action to them. They walk, shoot, walk, shoot, walk, act like they don't know what they are. They act like they don't know what a gun is. Some of them you can shoot. Some of them act like they have no idea where you are when you're clearly mowing them down with guns. And get stuck in areas. They get stuck in tunnels. You can look at them. They can get angry. You could see that they're looking at you and they're doing their little stomp, or they can, like one of the creatures that are around just know that you're there. They're roaring and stuff, and you shoot them and they just stand there. They literally stand in one spot as you shoot them. I can move around in little areas. They don't move. They're just so stupid. So all this effort and, ingenuity that they put into these abilities and these javelins are just wasted on these just horde slaughter of mindless zombies. This leads into another part is, okay, so there's this huge looter shooter aspect, and the main things that you're going to be getting are javelin abilities and guns. Javelin abilities, there's a nice variety in most of them. Some of them are a little bland, like the Storm is fun to play, but it's just ice ball, ice smash, fireball, fire smash, ice shard, fireball. But there are some that are fun to use. The ults, I have not found that you can change them at all. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm guessing you're stuck with the single ult. And that's good loot to get, but when you're in the game and you get an item, you can't tell what it is when you're out on missions and free play and whatnot. It just says uncommon item, common item, rare item. You have no idea what it is until you leave the expedition, which puts you through this little loading screen kind of thing where you see your character and you get told how much XP and how much loot you got, and then you can see what you got. And then you have to go all the way back into the base, go to your inventory, which there's a loading screen to access your inventory. Really? It's only like 5 or so seconds, but it's still enough where you're like, why? What if we just did a Minecraft and you hit the button and it's like 5 seconds to load into your inventory? You imagine how pissed people would be? It's just, it's not fluid. None of it is fluid, and it's just constant hindrance to your gameplay. And then we'll go to the guns. Like I said, you still get the same thing. Uncommon item, common item, rare item. It doesn't tell you what it is. The E3 demo was a lie. It doesn't pop up on your screen. It doesn't tell you anything about what you just got. You can't change anything while you're out in the field. There's no like little depots that you can go to or little like bases that are scattered around. Nothing. You don't get any of that. It's just a bunch of garbage. The guns look like some little child took a depressed set of Legos and tried to build all the same gun. Most of them they have all the similar look. They all look like this drab scrapper weapons that they might not be sharp and completely garbage, but they're like an organized group of scrappers put together weapons. So many of the guns look the same, like almost all the assault rifles, they look so similar. All the LMGs look similar. All the autocannons look similar. And then all of them have this overarching thing of that depressed, drab, brown and gray look. Some of the, legendary weapons and epic weapons, they look a little bit different, but they're not so different. They're like, wow, that's really unique and I'm glad I got that. They're just a looter shooter where one of the biggest, like half of your loot is garbage, you've just taken, okay, you can dismiss the story not being the greatest thing on planet Earth. But if the loot is amazing and it makes you excited and you want to go get more and better stuff, but it doesn't because it's all the same looking thing, it's just garbage. Another massive issue is the loot drop rate, which even in Grandmasters, you can get some common items and some uncommon items, and you really just don't get anything, especially fantastic. It's just a bunch of garbage that you just wasted so much time grinding out to try to find. It drops these piles of doo-doo in front of you when you expected from this extremely difficult mission to get something that's awesome and amazing, but you just don't. A lot of the side additions onto some of the items, you get like plus this percentage of this. You'll get some horrible ones all the time. You get like plus 5% machine gun ammo, plus 8% machine gun ammo, and then plus 3 machine gun ammo. It's horrible in some cases, and you just look at this awesome item that you just got and you see the extra, attachment on it, and it's just your eyes melt from your body and your soul just leaves. And you're like, why would I ever want this on, like a master crafted item or a rare item or whatever, a legendary, whatever you want to call it. It's just horrible. It just so distracts from that loot part because you're getting doo-dooed on. I wish they put some more effort and inspiration into this. And with the guns, obviously they're horrible. The abilities are nice. And like I said, I love the abilities and I think they're fun and entertaining to use in your javelins. And then you get to this thing which they said, oh yeah, you have this amazing javelin customization and character customization, but you don't. When you start out in the story and you select your character, it's just a bunch of preset faces that you can choose, and you can choose of one of 2 voices. And that's just extremely basic. And then you go to edit all your javelins, and they did a good job with color and with material. You can change all the materials and color of your armors, your helmet, your shoulder plate, your arms, torso, and your legs. And then you can change that color, and then you can add a couple of decals on. There's like a few decals you can put on. There's really nothing. And then you get to the main part, which is customizing like the silhouette, the look and figure of your javelin. And there's 1, 2 other items that you could choose. So you have a helmet, you have the arms, the torso, and the legs. And for each of them, each javelin has like 1 or 2 sets that you can choose from. And there's extremely minimum, and they all look generally similar. They all have the same feel to them. There's no real like, wow, that is just completely different and I would be unique if I'm out there and I earned this. No, you don't get any of that. For something that prides itself on being a looter shooter with so much customization and so much, people drooling from the mouth just to get a better, cooler looking weapon, this game is so lackluster and so subpar on that I can't. They said that they were going to change it. They said, oh, it's going to be awesome and, they're going to fix problems. They regressed, and they've come out with ultimately a poor looter shooter with poor story aspects And you'd expect them to live up to something, being Bioware, and seeing all these looter shooters in the past, Warframe, Destiny 1, Destiny 2, and a few others that I don't remember and can't name, that they learn from those mistakes and build upon it just to have this looter shooter that takes it to the next step. But they don't. They take it back. 1.5 steps forward, 6 billion steps back. I just wish they put more effort into it, in customization, into weapons, and it's so sad to see, because I was hoping that there would be some looter shooter that I would really love other than Warframe, but again, I am disappointed. Another one of the huge glooming issues is the mission design and how they are structured. You basically are given a choice from a couple of things: collect X and bring it here, kill enemies, stand here, kill enemies, and every single mission in the story, in the Strongholds, and in the open world from your contracts and just from world events and everything are structured around that same thing. You're basically either collecting something. There's like 6 or 7 different variants of collecting X and bringing it to something, but you're doing the exact same thing. Finding a piece, bring it to here. Then you have the kill enemies, which is just, they throw all the brain dead AI at you in massive numbers and you just defeat them. And some of them just spawn in front of you out of nowhere, and then some of them just disappear out of nowhere. Like, where did they go? I didn't kill that one. But then you also have the other minimal, which is stand here, activate this, or stand here and sit in a certain area. You know, I haven't seen any protection missions, but they're basically the same thing. Sit here, kill the enemies while you're sitting here. And that's it. That's all of the story missions. That's all of the world events, like I said. Everything. The Strongholds, which I thought would be interesting. The only thing that really deviates from them, that makes them different from all the other ones, is that you have this huge boss at the end. And 2 of the Strongholds, the end Stronghold, is the same boss from the end of the story. And the other one is just a reused, mini boss that is a little bit tougher and has a little bit more depth to it, but there's really nothing else to it. There's no sustenance, there's no substance to it. It's monotony, it's tedious, and it just makes your experience become this bore fest that you have to repeat over and over again to get gear, and it's just not entertaining because they have the same mix of small, again, uninspired. It was half-assed to the max. I can't believe any developer or any executive or any head or lead, whatever, think that these kinds of missions are what players enjoy and what would keep them coming back over and over again. No human being in my mind could ever think of something like this, and that is probably, to me, one of the worst parts of this game. Now, I just want to make it clear that I do not think Anthem is a huge dumpster fire, and I think there could be still hope in the future if they are able to update it and continue to add content to it. If you do enjoy the game, more power to you. This, to me, was a huge disappointment, as I was hoping to finally get another AAA $60 game that I could buy and sit down and play for countless numbers of hours. But from the looks of things, I am not going to be fully purchasing the game, nor am I going to be continuing my Premier access, because I do not really have any interest in it. Just looking at this game back when it was released, the trailers were released, and the trailers that were recently posted, I was so excited to be able to get into this like Iron Man suit simulator with these awesome abilities and weapons, but it just isn't that. And just because I made this review does not mean that it is a horrible game. You shouldn't enjoy it, and I don't hate you any more than I would hate anybody else for, enjoying the game, and that's your decision. But don't defend the game simply because you enjoy it, and I am not going to think the game is horrible just because I do not like it. I've tried to be as objective as possible, and hopefully you did garner something from this discussion. I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching if you still have, because this is quite a long video. If you did enjoy, go hit that like button down below. If you didn't, you know what to do. If you want to see more videos like this, as well as more game reviews, some discussion, and some gaming videos, go ahead and hit that juicy subscribe button, and subscribe, and the notification bell right next to it, and I will catch you on the next one.